Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for our first Google Hangout of the fall. We are so sorry about the last minute link change, but we are still on and we're live and we're happy to have you joining us. Today we are talking about cybersecurity and hackers in the 21st century, and we have a really amazing panel to talk about this topic. Joining us today we have CEO of ISC Squared, David Shearer. ISC Squared, if you don't know, is the International Information Systems Security Certification Consortium, hence ISC Squared. It's headquartered in the US with offices around the world, and it is the global not-for-profit leader in educating and certifying information security professionals throughout their careers. We also have Dr. Yusuf Al-Nashif. Dr. Yusuf Al-Nashif is a brand new faculty member here at Florida Polytechnic University, specializing in computer engineering and computer science. Prior to joining Florida Poly, he was the director of the Old Dominion University Center for Cybersecurity, Education, and Research. He has been published by IEEE, American Research Press, and others, and has written about wireless anomaly detection, static versus dynamic data information fusion, and a host of topics. We have also Tom Hall, our Vice President and Chief Information Officer here at Florida Poly. Tom is in charge of technology services at the university, as well as network infrastructure and cybersecurity. He has 30 years experience in information technology, including experience at IBM and with the Department of Defense. And we also have Riley Schill, who is a Florida Poly student who is majoring in cybersecurity. So thank you, all of you, for joining us. And I really just want to dive in. We have so many questions coming in from viewers already. And viewers, just to let you know, if you have questions throughout the discussion, you can use hashtag STEMTalks and tweet us, or you can ask them on the Google Plus page. But just diving right in, I want to get a sense of what is cybersecurity? We hear this term more and more these days. There are more hacks making the news. What does it mean, and how new is the field of cybersecurity? How soon has this emerged? And I want to toss this first to David.
Well, I think, there'll be varying opinions on how new it is. I think as soon as we started to connect things to what became the internet, and there were access points where systems became vulnerable to internet access, you could probably say that cybersecurity started at that point. Cybersecurity doesn't have one standard definition, country by country or throughout the industry. Many of us that were trained within the DoD ranks and came up through various organizations see cybersecurity as a subcomponent within information assurance, and so you've got everything that where there's an internet connectivity access point, there's a risk, but there's also other hard copy information and so forth. So as information security specialists and professionals, we have to look at information wherever it lies, and that information asset, whether it's a key asset to an organization or personally, we need to protect it. But the cybersecurity is where if it's connected to the web, you have an access point or a pivot point to be exploited, and that's where a lot of the focus has become, just because of the ubiquitous nature of technology.
Yusuf, would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so with cybersecurity, it's not even necessary to have a web. Sometimes you will have just enough to have a network where it's even a local network, and you have software and systems running, and you can still need to protect that one. You need to protect your assets. Somebody might come, especially with all the wireless environment and Internet of Things, so people can still connect to it even without being on the Internet.
Now, there are a couple of terms that we hear too. You hear about cyber attacks and cyber terrorism, and these are the reasons for needing cybersecurity. Is there a difference between the two, or are the terms interchangeable? And I'm going to toss that back to Yusuf, since we're on you.
Yeah, so cyber attacks usually could be things that are simple. It could be on the personal level. When we look at cyber terrorism, usually it's affecting a country or affecting an infrastructure for that country. It's more targeting some kind of infrastructure.
Okay, so cyber attack would be on a smaller scale, targeting an individual, and cyber terrorism is on a large scale. I know that we have a question coming in, and it's at the top of everyone's mind, and we got this tweet earlier from Bay News 9 actually asking, what is the easiest way that an individual can protect themselves from a cyber attack? So let's just get that one out of the way, because I know it's on everyone's mind, and I'm going to toss it to Tom.
I think there's a few ways that we try to tell people and our users to be careful out there. And one of them, is being careful on what you surf on the web and what forms do you fill out, and be careful of suspicious links and spam email, things that, with the proper amount of education and awareness, they can, protect themselves, and just be cautious about where they're putting their own personal information out on the web. And the other thing which David had mentioned during our pre-talk was, of course, with passwords and so forth, is just protecting your own, personal information. As you have user IDs and passwords that are ubiquitous across the web, whether you're doing online banking or just logging into a VPN, for example, to get to our university network, and just being very confidential with that information.
Great. David, would you add anything to that?
Well, I mean, at IC Squared, through our foundation, we have what's called Safe and Secure Online, where we go into schools and teach children and parents and educators to be safe online, protecting children. And we launched our seniors program just today. We're here in the Tampa area. We had seniors over here at our headquarters office in Clearwater, and we were educating our first group of seniors on how they can be safe online, because we see our young and our seniors as vulnerable. Young because there's predatory types of activity out there, so not having GPS turned on when the young are out there taking pictures where predators could find their geospatial reference where they're located, and for our elders, telemarketing and those folks that would try to exploit them over a telephone. Now it can be a phishing exercise. It can be clicking on a link inappropriately that they think is innocuous, or just all kinds of techniques that people use over the web to exploit folks. And patching your systems. One of the fundamental things of just keeping your system patched with the latest patches can improve your own personal security posture. So there's a range of things, and I think it's raising awareness with our young, our old, and those that are most vulnerable. And then within businesses, one of the #1 hacks in businesses is still phishing, and people are still clicking on attachments and still clicking on links. And we can spend millions of dollars in perimeter security, and we can have the best staff in the world out there doing their level best, working well over 40 hours a week. And it takes that one person to click on that one link that can spawn an internal hack that can negate a lot of hard work.
We're talking about a lot of different types of cyber attacks, cyber terrorism, a lot of different types of security breaches. And part of the reason for this conversation is to talk to students about how they can find careers in cybersecurity in this emerging field. So I want to take a minute and ask each of you what inspired you to get into cybersecurity. It seems to be changing so rapidly. And I want to start with Riley on this one, sort of our newest emerging leader in cybersecurity.
Thank you. Well, what inspired me to really get into this field is just because it's really right now a growing industry for the wrong reasons, in the sense that it's just going to keep growing. There are always going to be those who are doing the wrong thing, so this is my chance to do the right thing. And with all these colleges out here making students who are specializing in cybersecurity, there are always those students that are just going to go right off into the wrong thing. So it's just going to keep growing, and this is my chance to do the right thing.
That's great, Riley.
Thank you.
What about you, Tom? You have a little bit more experience in the field. What inspired you?
I just think it's interesting, and over the past 15 years, we've seen the trend to be with e-commerce on the internet and more activity on the internet. It's one of the most it's the fastest growing field in information technology and computer science. So that in and of itself is interesting, and our challenge here at the university or any institution is to keep open access for everybody, but at the same time protecting your community from those hackers and those threats that are out on the internet. So that is, the science and the technology to that is very interesting as well.
Dr. Al-Nashif?
So with the increase of all the threats and the demands of people for the internet and the cyberspace, it becomes very challenging, and this part, the challenging part of the cyberspace, is actually the part that made me go in the direction of cybersecurity. It's challenging, it needs a lot of solutions, and it requires a lot of professional people in cybersecurity, and still we are lacking a lot of experience in that field.
And what about you, David?
Well, I'd just been in IT for years, and then had the opportunity to come to IC Squared as the COO, and then graduated to the CEO. We have a delta of 1.5 million people through our research that we need to fill in the workspace between now and 2020. There's a huge delta. These types of attacks and attacks that the professor had referenced on critical infrastructure. These are scary times, and we need a lot of people. I like Riley's. We need people on the good side of this argument. I mean, we have to be right all the time. The hacker just needs to be right that one time that compromises us and gains access and causes an exploit. So we need as many people that are on the right side of the law when it comes to bad actors that are trying to exploit folks. I mean, we fight this battle day in and day out. We have members, 110,000 members in 160 countries out there fighting the good fight around the world every day. And somebody needs to come in and advocate for them. Somebody needs to come in and raise awareness so that they can get the support within their organizations. And no one person can do it. No one organization can do it. So when we have opportunities to get on a call, on a webinar like this with a distinguished panel that we have and a bright young student that's on the right side of the argument, these things are what tell us after a long day. This is what inspires us to keep, pressing forward to take the mission and vision forward for cybersecurity and information security as well.
These are all great points, and one of the reasons we're so excited about cybersecurity at Florida Poly is because it is such an emerging field, and there's going to be this constant need for it. It's something that's not going away. Our president, Dr. Randy Avent, likes to point out too that it's not something we'll outsource. Because of the nature of it, you always need to keep cybersecurity close at home, and that's something that's interesting. I pulled some information. The FBI now ranks cybercrime as one of its top law enforcement activities, and the president earlier this year proposed an increase in cybersecurity spending to $14 billion. So it's a field that's growing in demand, as you pointed out, David. We're getting a lot of questions about the hacks that have made the news. Probably the most infamous is the Sony attack, but there have been hacks with Home Depot, with the Pentagon, with Target, with Staples. Let's talk a little bit about those. And is there anything that that you guys know that can explain why we've seen such an influx of hacks in the news? And I'm going to toss this one back to David to start.
Well, I'm going to use an analogy, and years ago we couldn't find and discern that people had cancer as well as we can today because we didn't have the tools at our disposal to find those types of things. So our tools and our ability to identify whether we've been compromised, and I still say today that there are probably people that are owned by foreign entities that don't even still realize that they've been owned. We saw that with the OPM breach. There was a long period of time from the time that compromise took place until the folks there actually realized that they had been compromised, those types of things. So I think our tools are getting better, our monitoring's getting better, people are getting smarter about looking at their event notifications and parsing through reams of information to see when there's spurious activity that may be a forewarning that they've either been compromised or about to be compromised. So I think we're finding the attacks and we're finding the compromises far better than we did. That doesn't mean that we're necessarily stopping them. So I think we know that the order of magnitude of the attacks, they're coming from more locations around the world and they're hitting more people around the world. So they're emanating from more locations and they're targeting more organizations and people around the world. And I think we're just finding more of those breaches through the tools, and now there are more regulations to notify. People can't sit on the fact that they've been compromised. They need to take that forward. And so we're getting a more timely notifications of those types of hacks. So I think we're just more aware than we were.
And Yusuf, what do you think?
So continuation to David. So I think David said most of what I want to say. But with the increase in on the number of people using the cyberspace, and also moving all these services to the cloud and the cloud console. So more and more information are being available to people to get, and also the increase in the technology gave people more chance and became very easy for them to perform hacking. So the complexity and the types of the attacks increased, and the knowledge needed to launch those attacks decreased. And this is mainly why we keep seeing those increase in hacking and in all those breaches.
I'll expand on this and ask you to answer it, Yusuf. David mentioned that companies have gone a long time under a breach without even realizing it. And I remember, I think the Home Depot breach, I think it was that one, that it was going on for a few months before they realized there was a breach. So what can companies do, or what are we doing, what are we learning about cybersecurity that can help us track these sooner?
So there are many things. One thing that I think it's the most important is to have people in IT who are experts in cybersecurity. So we need more people who are knowledgeable in cybersecurity to figure out. We have, as Tom said, we have so many tools. We have very good tools that can be done, but there are very few people who know how to use the tools, when to use them, what policies to be enforced on those companies. So many times that the breaches is nothing more than some of the IT people, they did not know, they did not have the knowledge to protect their assets, and that's basically what's happening.
Interesting. So this question has popped up. It's at the very top from Addy210, and I know people are thinking it too. So who was potentially behind the Sony attacks? I know the government has said that it was likely Korea. Is that even possible? Could they have done that? What are your thoughts? I'm going to start with Yusuf again.
Yeah, I can't answer this one. I don't have the knowledge to answer, so I will take the government's answer for that one.
David, do you have any other thoughts?
What he said. No, I mean, I think that you just got to be careful. You're making nation-state comments, and we have people within the United States that have opinions, and we have people that should have the information that are tracking that. I just don't think it really serves a productive purpose to kind of call out or speculate when we don't know definitively. Perhaps somebody does. But I can tell you, this guy sitting here, I don't know definitively. I'd be really uncomfortable, speculating as to, whether they had the ability, whether it was them. I mean, because what you see is there are pivot points around the world. It's relatively easy to make things look like an attack may emanate from one place to the other. So I think we have to be really careful before we jump to conclusions, because it could really look like the attack came from one location, but a really sophisticated attack could be setting somebody else up to take the fall. And so I think we just have to border on caution until we have some definitive information. Sometimes we never know. I mean, there are cases that we've had in attacks that we never really truly know.
And it's a funny question. People are really interested in it. So good answers there. But that does seem to be part of the problem with cybersecurity, is tracking the breaches, but also it seems very easy for hackers to hide behind them and to find out who's actually behind them and to prevent them from attacking again. Is that the case? And are there advancements in the industry that are going to help us find the criminals, essentially? And David, while we have you.
Well, I mean, I think what we're seeing is, when we start to talk about cyber terrorism and cyber warfare, we have nation-state and sophisticated attacks leveraging civilian networks as pivot points and jump-off points to corporations and other, critical infrastructure and so forth. So it is becoming increasingly complex. And as technologists, we all love technology. And technology comes with convenience, but it's almost as we push more convenience out to end users, whether it's in automobiles or personal lives, we increase the attack vectors that we talk about. These are opportunities that say, and that's where sometimes, cybersecurity and information security, we're always the folks saying we got to be careful, but most people just want to keep their phones wide open. They don't want to hear about security because sometimes it takes an extra step, or you're telling them to have complex passwords, those types of things. So our profession we're not always the most popular folks, because we're trying to look at risk, we're trying to mitigate risk, we're trying to raise awareness in our corporations and organizations, and then folks think that we're trying to lead through fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But real things and bad things are happening, and we need to continue to raise awareness and fight the good fight.
Sure. It seems too like there's a need to strike a balance between cybersecurity and ease of use, which is what everybody loves so much about iPhones and iPads and their Samsung Galaxies and all of these personal devices. Part of that is because they're easy to use and you want to use them quickly. So I don't know if you guys have anything to say about how to strike a balance between ease of use and cybersecurity. And Tom, I'm going to maybe see if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, it really is a challenge, especially at universities. I mean, it is at every corporation or institution, because you do need that web presence, and you're jumping on the internet that has all the hackers and the threats and the people that are really out to get you. So it's a balance that you have to strike. And the good thing is, I think there is some hope, is that there's really good technology these days, from intrusion detection and firewalling, intrusion prevention system, but also to a point, Crystal, you were making earlier, is that what is it that around the world we can do? And what we're seeing is, first of all, some guidelines and sort of regulations that are coming in certain industries from the government that people have to comply with. So you can't become complacent or lazy as an institution by not having the right technology. And second, the other thing that we're seeing is that the internet service providers, the people that allow you to register your IP address and your domain name on the internet, they are now becoming a little bit more liable. And the countries that have maybe the highest amount of hackers and people that do the threats, those ISPs can be called out. In fact, we've had to do that in the past, where we've called other countries and said, the IP address that we see trying to get into our environment through SQL injection or trying to hack into a particular server or network device is an IP address that's coming from your ISP, and they have to respond to it now. So there is some hope in that regard on the horizon.
Tom, while I have you, there's a question associated with ease of use, and that is, what are the risks associated with public Wi-Fi? And I know that's something that we talk about on our campus because we have Wi-Fi here, we have Wi-Fi for our students, for our guests and visitors, and obviously so much is in the cloud. What are the risks, and what do you do to mitigate those?
Yeah, there's definitely risk. People that there's hacker attempts where people would come into your environment on a campus or say in a bank branch parking lot and try to hack into the wireless LAN that's in that branch. And the key thing from our perspective is that we've got to make sure that we're using the right protocols and we're using the right protection techniques. And the good thing is that those have improved really on a monthly basis. So the latest drivers, and when we allow people to connect, even wirelessly, we're tracking that MAC address, and we're only allowing the ones that we feel secure, running the right protocols, are allowed into the network. So, best practices like that you have to stay on top of.
Sure. And Riley, since you're a student on our campus using public Wi-Fi, and imagine a lot of students, just like a lot of professionals these days, are using public Wi-Fi and working at Starbucks and working everywhere. What do you do? What do you do to make sure that your information is secure?
I personally, I'm a bit higher end, but for stuff that's more sensitive, I use a VPN, which is sort of like a proxy, so it hides where you are, so it makes it just that one step harder. But again, you just have to be careful with what Wi-Fi you're connected to. On campus, I always connect to our PolySecure, so that's where only our students can log on to it, so it minimizes that risk of someone, like Tom said, pulling up into a bank parking lot or pulling up to our parking lot and just trying to do it from their car. But it's just really watching what you connect to, and on Windows they always give you that option. I'm sure many of you have seen when you first connect, whether it's a home or a public network, so you just have to keep an eye on that.
We have an interesting question from Ian Van Cleef. Says he's been working on a project since he left a university and has been developing a Linux-based OS that automates certain functions of IT security, such as intrusion detection and vulnerability analysis. Systems be essential in the future. What are your thoughts, Dr. Al-Nashif?
So can you repeat that question, please, again? I didn't get all the question.
Sure. This is a former student who has been working on an intrusion detection and vulnerability analysis automated system, and wants to know, will such automated systems be essential in the future? And maybe you can speak to automated security systems in general.
Yeah, it's very important actually, and as one thing which is very important is to move from the current reactive systems to a proactive system, and automating is one thing, but for us to be able to automate security system, we have to be certain to do good detection, because if you do detection and your detection is not perfect, then you will end up creating trouble for yourself, similar to an attack, similar to a denial of service. So we need to build that capability that will give us very good detection. And this is some of the technologies that are coming to cybersecurity, where you automate the detection and protection, but the key point is you need to have a very good detection rate for that to work.
And David, I imagine you have some input on that too. Can you speak about automated systems for cybersecurity?
Well, yeah, it sounds like the student that's graduated has some great ideas, and being an entrepreneur and looking at the types of some new tools. There's a plethora of tools out there today, so we have a lot of tools. What we find often is that these tools can often generate vast logs. And if no one's looking at the logs and no one's looking at what the tools are actually generating, and we've seen some of this in the breaches, that some of these things were identified. And so I think organizations have to look at, do you have the in-house talent to parse through all those logs and look for events and take action? Or can you source some of that? Can you look at, there are ways that you can outsource some of that work, where you have organizations that have a cadre of people that can look at that voluminous logs, identify events that might be a leading indicator that something's awry, so then the organization, your IT staff, can take action. Sometimes you need more hands on the ground actually taking action, patching systems, and being proactive than people looking at logs. And so we're seeing more and more folks that may be small businesses and even large businesses are outsourcing some of that work because there are expert organizations out there that can help with that. So I think, yes, tools are definitely very important. There's a lot of overlap with tools. You have to make sure that you don't have tools paralysis, and you got to make sure if you buy an expensive tool, I think Professor said it well, a great tool that you don't have anyone that knows how to run it or doesn't know how to actually maximize the benefit of it is just an expensive tool that's not going to yield the results you may be looking for.
So we have a question from Twitter too. It says, what is America's biggest security concern? But maybe broaden that. Obviously, we've got different types of cybersecurity issues, whether it's credit card theft or social security theft. The Sony hack was very extensive. It got into emails and contracts and salaries. So of these, what is the biggest concern we should have as a society when it comes to cybersecurity? David, go ahead and chime in.
Gosh, it's always really tough to take such a broad topic and try to take one, but I will just offer for my opinion on this. I think critical infrastructure is the biggest risk, just because the order of magnitude of impact. And so when you look at Department of Homeland Security and the 18 sectors of critical infrastructure, whether it's electric, healthcare, medical, we have an aging power grid. Over 90% of the power grid is owned by private industry. It needs to be revamped. Attacks to that could take power outages that could just wreak havoc. And so I'm not saying that to be gloom and doom. I'm saying that these are critical things. Critical infrastructure, the financial sector, all those critical infrastructure sectors are vitally important to the lives that we've come to enjoy, especially here in the United States. And it's no different internationally. I mean, we're an international organization, and I travel all over the world speaking on what's happening with cybersecurity, and I hear the same thing in other countries as well. So I think attacks on critical infrastructure that really can affect the population, maybe even affect the economy, I think come with the largest order of magnitude.
Makes sense. Yusuf, do you agree, or would you add anything to that?
I completely agree with David. So I think critical infrastructure, people are moving more and more, as he said, everything is aging. We are moving more and more to smart environments, smart grid, and nowadays there are even search engines that will go and check for you, tell you what is connected, where it's connected, and hackers can gain access very easily to those things. So we need to be very careful, especially with the critical infrastructure.
We have another question coming in from Twitter, which is, are online transactions really secure? So obviously the infrastructure is important, but individuals are concerned about their own personal transactions. And can those really be secure through HTTPS and other systems? And Yusuf, while we have you, go ahead and answer that.
So sure, the HTTPS improves the security. Using HTTPS, actually, you should try to use it whenever you can, not just for this kind of transaction, but for protecting your information and financial. It's not just the connection. You need to make sure that the entity that you are doing the transaction with is correct. So cybersecurity is not just that part. If the entity that you are trying to do the transaction with, they don't have enough protections, they don't have enough inside policy, then your information is still, you still have an issue with a cybersecurity problem. So it's very important to know also that which entity you are doing the transaction with.
So what does the future of cybersecurity hold? What is emerging in this emerging field? If somebody was interested in pursuing a career in cybersecurity, what should they be most looking at? And Yusuf, I'll toss this to you again, but I'd like everybody on the panel to answer it.
Okay. So from my opinion, we need to build. So one thing before I say what is that I think is the way to go with cybersecurity, we need to accept one thing, that we with the fast development cycle of software and technology, it's almost impossible to build something without vulnerability. So we need to accept that there are vulnerabilities, and the way to go around this is to build resilient systems. So we know that there are vulnerabilities, but we need to make sure that they are resilient. Also, we need to establish a trust between different communicating entities. If we can achieve these two things, then I think we have a very good way or a very good trend in protecting for the future. So the way that I think the future is mainly we need to focus on cybersecurity, on resilience and trust.
Tom?
Yeah, Krista, I think it's a great question. I think I see nothing but growth in cybersecurity, and that's in the area of network security, database security, system security. All those things are, the hacking, the sophistication of what's happening out there is growing. So there's nothing but growth in terms of the information security and cybersecurity. And the thing I'll add to one of the earlier statements is that, we still see education and awareness as being, a very big component of being secure. So there's that component along with the technology. And, right now, the last measurement I saw on the internet last month was there's 2.5 billion email messages that are considered spam or phishing attempts on the internet on a daily basis, and
Wow.
It's growing. So those hackers are getting results, and they're seeing, people simply replying to spam email, going to a spoofed website that David and Yusuf were talking about, and that, going to an untrusted website and giving their information. So even with HTTPS and secure sockets layer, even with the best technology, there's still the exposure to the user and to the corporation. So this is a field that, all different areas of cybersecurity, I think, are going to continue to grow for years to come.
David, what are you seeing in your work? What are the biggest growth areas or biggest things that people interested in this field should be looking at?
Well, I want to put a plug in for women, because we'd love to see more growth of women in the profession. Our research shows that women only represent 10 to 11%, and that's both within our membership and non-members. So we'd love to see more women coming into the field. And I've actually had women that have headed up my security program in large IT operations, and I can tell you from experience they do fantastic work. They're fantastic leaders, and we need to get more in. So tell your daughters, your nieces, you know, let's get these young women interested in information and cybersecurity. We need them. And then when we talk about education like Florida Poly and we talk about STEM and we start to talk about the Internet of Things, we have to start to look at engineering in a cross-discipline way. When we look at the Fiat Chrysler hack on the Jeep, you know, we have to start to look at embedded systems. So we have electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, software engineering, all the engineering sciences, all the things that kind of follow the whole STEM you know, education awareness. We need to be looking at these embedded systems. A car is now an embedded system. Should we be separating, physically air gapping the entertainment network from the operational network? There's a whole range of things that bring in this whole engineering profession and education together to say we all have a seat at the table, we all can make a difference, and we all have to be spot on to bring products and services to the marketplace that people can have confidence in. Just like you get the 5-star crash rating, you know, we should have standards and ways that we assess products that have embedded Internet of Things types of technology, that we know that the engineering and the way they were designed, that we built security in. We've said for many years secure software, and we're still a secure software advocate. We have certifications for that. We advocate around the world. Build software security in at the inception phase, requirements phase. Don't bolt it on in the end. And for heaven's sake, don't be a software vendor that dumps alpha and beta software on our workforce that's already inundated with other things to let us be the ones that have to go out there and beta test your software at our expense and maybe our organization's expense. So easy for me to get on my soapbox and start on that. But I do think STEM, we need more women. We need to be getting all the engineering sciences together to understand their role in securing this planet and giving better products and services to customers and looking at critical infrastructure. It is an absolutely exciting, wide open field, and we need more people, more young folks coming into it. I'll tell you the other thing, 13,930 people responded to our Global Information Workforce Study. Only 6% of those people are under the age of 30. So educators, professors, we got Tom there at a university, we got the professor there, we got a young man there that's in the pipeline coming out. We have got to find a way to reach the young and get them into this because we have an aging workforce, and we're not going to solve that 6% below the age of 30 in 1 or 2 years. This is going to be a 5, maybe 10-year plan that we need to come together as academia and certification bodies and find a way to educate our young so that they can be a part of the future and securing, you know, countries and infrastructure around the globe.
I think that was a great soapbox, David. I thought it was fantastic, and it's such a great segue because as you were talking, I wanted to toss it over to Riley because you talked a lot about working collaboratively, kind of across disciplines, working on engineering and cybersecurity, and that's one of the things that we talk a lot about at Florida Poly, giving students a cross-disciplinary education, or at least the opportunity to work with students in different majors and actually solve real-world problems. So Riley, as I toss this to you, I want to ask, one, what are some of the emerging trends that you're excited about in cybersecurity? But talk a little bit about some of the courses that you've taken. It doesn't have to be a computer science course here at Florida Poly, but how you are working across disciplines, and whether or not that's going to help you. You feel like that's going to help you when you get out in the workforce.
Thank you, Crystal. And my biggest thing that I see cybersecurity going into is where you have to keep software up to date, because this isn't really the field where you can think as long as it works, we're good, because there's always going to be that new workaround that someone finds. And David brought up an awesome point on how cars are now being hacked, where, as many of you have probably seen, many car brakes can be remotely activated. And all those new cars, and that's just something where when you're incorporating technology into things that used to be, in a sense, mechanical, you just have to stay on top of it rather than think as long as it works now, it's going to work forever. And then with my course load right now, I've gone so far. In my freshman year, I started Intro to Computer Programming, which was Python. And then over the summer, just to keep myself busy, I guess you would say, I took Programming 1, which I would have taken my sophomore year first semester. And now I'm going to go into, we're going to jump down to my senior year just because these are the classes I'm excited for. But my senior year, first semester, I have classes like machine learning, computer security, web application security. I even have a class called ethical hacking, so that's going to be a fun class because in the cybersecurity field you have to know how to hack to protect from hacking. But yeah, those are some of the classes I'm excited for. And as you asked with the mixing computer science and engineering, those would be, I've yet to work in the lab, but across the hall from me I have the VTC robotics lab, and that's where I think of I would be working with the engineers, where they would actually design the mechanical part of it and I would design the software side of it.
That's great. And I don't know if you've gotten a chance to work in the cybersecurity lab, but I know that some of our students have been actually working on hacks, like trying to find the open spots and trying to spot hacks in the lab here. And so that's really exciting. Dr. Al-Nashif, I know that you are brand new to our faculty and are just getting started with this next year's curriculum, but I'm hoping you can give us a sense of what you would expect from your cybersecurity students and what you would be having them work on in your courses.
So the curriculum in the cybersecurity, it's the way it looks. So I went through it, as you mentioned. I'm new here to Florida Poly, but I went through the curriculum itself, and what makes me interested in the curriculum is you can see that it's interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary, and it connects so many things that will make a cybersecurity person very good cybersecurity person. So we can see that there is in the curriculum courses in engineering, courses in programming and computer science. You can see very strong math courses, plus of course the other courses that they can take them elective from, whether it's mechanical engineering or industrial engineering. So there are the other courses. So this makes it a very strong curriculum. The other thing that I see in the curriculum itself is that it can combine or it is actually fed back the way the curriculum works. So the information and everything, the curriculum is coming from the industry partner. So we get feedback from the industry partner and we improve our curriculum continuously. So it's not like it's a fixed kind of curriculum. So this is for the curriculum itself. As for the students, so I think any student who has interest in security itself, who is strong in math, computer science, should be a very good candidate for cybersecurity. So this is what I'm expecting. I'm expecting people who have passion for computer science and also they like math. So these are the two main, I think in my opinion, that those are the two main components that for success in cybersecurity.
That's great. And you mentioned that we work very closely with our industry partners and that the curriculum is ever-changing, as it has to be at a university focused on high-tech and engineering. Those fields are ever-changing. So while we have him here, David, when you're looking to hire new employees, what do you think is the most important thing for college students to have before they graduate, be it hands-on experience or internship experience or a particular course? What would you look for somebody just entering the workforce?
Well, it's when you're looking and hiring folks that have been in the workforce, you look for the professional experiences they've elected to have, and you look for the diversity of that, because I think that people that look to have a diverse range, and I think that cross-curriculum, cross-domain type of training, I think actually various types of programs looking at universities, because universities are just now, really scratching the surface of getting into their cybersecurity programs, right? I mean, and one program isn't the same as the next. So I think, truly looking at I think there's market differentiation there, and you look at what the student has been exposed to and cross, what I talked about, the cross engineering disciplines. I definitely would look for something if there's the types of internships they've done. What were the outcomes of that internship? And then, of course, when you're going to hire folks right out of college, you're going to put them into a process where you're onboarding them and giving them the opportunity to get that experiential aspect of their career going as well. So I think it's going to be very different. It's really tough just looking at someone just coming out of college. You're going to have to put them into kind of building them in entry-level positions and bringing them along. I think it's a little bit easier to look at people that have been in the field We're a little different as a certification body. We tend, our CISSP requires 5 years of experience, and we have an associate program that allows people to gain that experience over time and not carry the full designated credential. But we're complementary to universities. We work with, we have a global academic program where people come out, they go into our certification process, and then we know that they're in a continuing education, because in order to maintain their certification, they have to get continuing professional education each year, those types of things. So I also do think, and it's going to be a plug for ISC Squared and other certification bodies, looking at someone who's committed to a professional certification coming out of school, says that they're committed to the profession, they're committed to continual learning, and I think both certification bodies and academia are complementary, and we see more of that. It used to be, should you have a certification or a formal education? And I think more and more the answer is yes, yes. I think they're complementary things, and I think they can really help hiring officials get a sense for the type of individual they're going to have working in their workforce.
Thank you so much. I think this was a great discussion. We're getting right up on our closing time, so I wanted to let all of our viewers know that this is the first in our fall series. We'll have 3 more hangouts just like this, and the next one coming up is on the rise of the machines. So we'll be talking about robotics, and that will be in September, and then we'll have one in October and November as well. And I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us. Thank you so much, everyone. Also, if we did not quite get to your question, we are going to try to get answers to these questions and then post them on flpoly.org, so we will have them posted for you, and you can also view this recording on YouTube, on our website, and also on iTunes. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night.